Welcome to the Focus on Why podcast. I'm Amy Rowlinson and I ask my guests one simple question. Why? Focusing on the importance of why, I share with you the relatable, uplifting and inspiring conversations I have with people from all walks of life. This podcast will encourage you to focus on your why to enable and empower you to achieve the success you desire. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Before we start, I would like to draw your attention to my weekly email newsletter, Friday Focus. Each Friday, I focus on one topic with one action arising. The link to sign up is in the show notes, or head over to amyrowlinson.com and sign up right now. Today on Focus on Why, I am joined by Dana Grindal. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you so much, Amy. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, we have a thank you. We have a thank you and a shout out to the wonderful Steve Buston for introducing us. It's always fantastic to have a recommendation. So thank you, Steve.
Yay. Thank you, Steve. You're the best.
And I think also Sue Richardson endorsed this getting together as well.
Yes, we've all been in a group together, learning and being challenged with one another to be better speakers, which is an amazing leadership by Steve. So yes, we've all been friends and partners on the journey for sure.
I will give Steve a shout out because he runs a fantastic mastermind called Critique Club. And if you want to get better at speaking, 100% go check him out. I'll put a link in the show notes as well, because it is a fantastic course that he takes you through.
Truly.
Brilliant. Right. Enough of Steve. He's had enough shout outs. Let's talk about you, Dana. What is it that you're doing at the moment?
Thank you so much, Amy. I got quite a bit going on in the time that we have moved to England, actually just a couple years. Published my first book called Healing from the Heart. Have a really online ministry at this point, doing some online classes. And my ministry partner and I are building out a school called Teaching Fellowship Institute to help equip people who work with others in how to handle trauma and emotional injuries, just emotional healing, really, emotional healing, and suicidal, helping train people on how to walk with others who are considering suicide and how to prevent that. So lots of really amazing content that's really kind of been my season, is creating content. So speaking, also doing a podcast with a friend in the US called Fearless and Free, Spirit, Soul, and Body. Which is a holistic approach to healing. Yeah, those. Then I do meet with people one-on-one. I do have some clients that I meet with from the US. And just walking with people in their own journeys.
So healing from the heart. Is there any other way to heal?
No, I tried the other ways. It didn't work. It didn't work. Yeah. The book Healing from the Heart really is my focus. It really is. It is the content of my purpose. It's my own story of healing, where I had a physical injury. And I started off trying the normal routes, and it was not, the quick fix. You just want the pill, the adjustment, the procedure, just get me back on my feet and out there running full speed. And that was not my journey. That was not an option. But what I learned in that journey was that what I really needed was healing in the heart, the way I did life, the way I saw myself, the way I saw others and expectations. And so it was the physical injury itself that actually brought a season of emotional and mental healing, spiritual healing for me. And that totally reset me, brought me back into alignment, not only physically, but emotionally and mentally, and really focusing on who I really am. And I couldn't do it all, but I was called to do some things and to do those things better and more focused.
And I'm curious to find out, do you think that the physical injury manifested because you needed the other healing?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. In my journey, I share this more in detail in the book, but I had a physical injury when I was younger. And like many of those injuries that we have, we dust ourselves off. We get going. Like I said, we try to get over it as quick as possible. We're a very speedy society these days, and we just move right over it. And at the time, I didn't think it was that serious. I was young. I just kept going. Then later on, when I continued the same behaviors, a lot of the same patterns, and those increased. Those were just injuring me more and more over time. And so it really did bring forward, it brought to the surface the way that I was living, that kind of tension that I was living in, brought to the surface this injury that was already there and needed. That's what really was needing attention.
So step through what happened in terms of you had your injury when you were young, and then how has that become the focus and the content of the purpose? What were the pieces in between?
Yeah, that's really good. So when I teach, when I talk about healing, it's not about what's happened to you. It's about how you responded to what's happened to you. We can all go through the same car accident, the same fire, the same incident, and people will respond differently. We respond differently based on past experience. We respond differently based on our personality, by our beliefs. All of these things come together. If you're a parent and you have multiple children, you know this about your kids. They all live in the same house and they all respond differently to the announcement of what dinner is, or it just just so unique, right? We're so unique, which is a beautiful gift. It really is. But it means that our healing is much more complicated than just a formula, just a kind of band-aid or one pill fixes it all. So my journey in that season where I had that initial injury and it was long gone. It was gone from my mind, thoughts gone, I'm better, no problem. Thought I was very strong and healthy, really kind of prided myself at that time in life. I thought I was really fit, really healthy, running all the time, pushing the jogging stroller, doing all the mom things, doing it all. That was kind of my phrase, do it all. I even took a Bible verse totally out of context that said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I believed I was supposed to do it all. Like I truly believe that. So I'm nonstop. I'm volunteering everywhere. At that point, I wasn't working outside of the home, but I had no boundaries. I was working constantly, volunteering, serving in every community group, every child's group, every sports team, everything there was. I was the favorite volunteer. And I was just going nonstop. And literally, I started having a discomfort. My back kind of started hurting a little bit after a trip. And it just kind of felt like this catch. It felt like you're trying to pop your back and it just wouldn't pop. And after a couple of days of that, I thought, okay, I'm going to have to make time for me, which was not in my vocabulary at that space. Make time. I'm going to have to make an appointment or do something. So I go to a recommendation. A family member recommends that I go to their massage person. I didn't go to a doctor. I didn't get an x-ray. I didn't go to anyone professional of any kind because it couldn't be serious. My mind was just get it done quick, right? So I go to this massage person who did work for a chiropractor. And, he does a quick assessment, no x-ray, and just says, yeah, you've got quite a big knot here. Let me get that out for you. And he spent about 30 minutes working on this knot that was in between my shoulder blades near my spine. And I did leave there feeling better, but weird. My arm was limp. I felt weak and dizzy, just really out of sorts. But just thought, he's like, yeah, they tell you when you get a massage, you're going to feel foggy. Your brain's going to be a little foggy. Drink water, get some good rest, and you'll be fine. So I didn't think any different. I went to bed that night, normal, stayed up late, doing projects. And I woke up in the middle of the night with excruciating muscle spasms. I didn't know what was happening. I was terrified. I think I was as terrified of the pain and what was happening, emotionally, the unknown of what was happening, as I was the physical pain, which was more pain than I had ever been in. Up to that point, like I said, I considered myself very healthy, very fit, would never have gone looking for any kind of help because I didn't think I needed it. But in that moment, I was just terrified. And after some time, I figured out one position I could sit in the corner of a wingback chair and that I could catch my breath because I couldn't even breathe, couldn't even take that deep breath. The pain, was so severe and the spasm so severe. And so I just sat all night and my husband did what he could. I didn't want to go to the emergency room and scare the kids. And so I just sat there until the morning. And that began this journey of healing, going to the orthopedic spine doctor was the first person I could get into. And they start talking about surgery. They start talking about medicines. He was confident. He said, well, you could try this or that, but you'll be back to see me. You're definitely going to need surgery. And he spoke that to me right then. I'm young, I'm in my early 30s, and the whole thing, to go to bed and feel normal, not have any kind of accident that you're aware of, and then just wake up with this news. The whole thing was just really shocking. And so, I went home still in pain with no answers and really just scared of what was going to be next. So I called my mom, as you would do, and just kind of told her what was going on. And she began to research and look for things, and she said, my mom's very patient and wise, and said, let's look for other options. Surgery is always there, but once you've done it, it's done, and as I started researching, I did not find, I personally at that point, and I'm sure that's not universally, but for me at that time, I didn't find anyone that had had neck surgery that was pain-free. So I thought, well, if that's not the fix, if that's not going to be this quick fix that I'm looking for, I need to look for other options. So it began this journey that I talk about in the book. Each chapter kind of talks about this journey of unfolding the pieces of what I needed. And some of it was massage. Some of it was just all of these horrible knots and tension that were there that had not been released, had not been let go. All this tension that I was holding in. I wasn't living in a space where I rested, where I made time for rest, especially for me as the mom. I didn't make that a priority in any way. And I wasn't stretching well. I wasn't balanced in the way I was living. And I really kind of liken that stretching to the balance. If we're always living and working in this place where we're building more and more tension, and we never pause and stretch and rest, that physically is what resets our muscles, is to make time for those stretches. And anyone who's done any kind of running or athletic know how important the stretches are. And that was something I had started skipping to make more time, for the doing. I wasn't very good at being. I was really good at doing, not so good at being. So from that point of the injury, I found that while I was on this journey of getting information on how to get well, I found myself sitting a lot. And I was thankfully in this space where, or place, I should say, where, I could took the muscle relaxer so I could, sleep. Then I could get up in the morning. I could do a little bit to get ready, and then I would have to rest my arms. My injury was really, turns out it was herniated disc in my neck, my lower neck, C6 and C7. So I could do a little bit, then I'd have to rest my arms. And I could do a little more, and then I had to rest and do a little more. So completely changed the way I was doing life. All these little rests were built in, all these little breaks. And little by little, I learned stretches that helped me, and I was making time to do those all day. And it really became a part-time job for me to get well. And I was now making all this time for healing that I didn't make before. So if we don't, this is actually, a statement in the book. If we don't make time for health today, we will make time for illness later.
And it's really interesting because you said that you completely changed how you were doing life. And again, it's still that doing, what about the being? How about being life? When did that start for you?
It started in that time. It started in the chair, being a Christian, being a minister. At that point, I was leading prayer groups for schools, prayer group in our church. And so, I knew about praying, but even that was a doing. I wasn't a very good listener. I wasn't a very good listener then. I was really good at talking, telling the kid, do these things, this is what we're going to do, getting things done. And even when I talked to God, it was a to-do, it's, can you do this? And can you fix that for these kids? and it was a to-do list, honestly. And I wouldn't have said it that way, but that's how it was. It wasn't a relationship, wasn't a very good listener. So I had a bit of time, a lot of time sitting. The kids would get to school early on. People had to drive them and do that. I couldn't drive. So I had a lot of time sitting by myself. All the volunteer things went away. And I call it my time in the chair. In that same wingback chair, I would sit and, read or, pray still had some things I could do a little bit electronically, although back then we didn't do a lot with the texting. But yeah, I had a lot of quiet time and really to catch up with my thoughts. And what I noticed, the most significant thing I noticed in that time in the chair, that even though my body was physically still, even though my to-do list was all taken away because I couldn't do it. So other people were doing the grocery, other people were doing all the things. My mind was going, my mind was racing. My mind was going as fast as my body used to go. And that was my first clue that I needed to do things differently. That was my first clue that something was going on the inside that was perpetuating the outside, and that even though my back, my physical body did need adjustment, it was because of being so out of alignment on the inside, and these racing thoughts of just, I have to be productive, I have to be doing, I have to perform, right? Perform well, perform well as a mom, perform well as a wife, perform well. I just took it all on myself. No one told me that. It was just these undercurrents that I had picked up and lived that way. So the thing about performing and striving and having to do it all, often we don't know that we need healing in that area because the world rewards that. If you're doing that for your boss or at the church or in the schools, the clubs, the women's group, whatever that looks like, people reward that. Oh, you're so great. You're amazing at getting things done. And you're the first one they call for the next job that needs to be done, which is kind of where I was at that point. And so it perpetuates and it becomes this snowball that's out of control. And in my case, it was controlling me. The performing and the doing was controlling me. I didn't have good boundaries at that time. I didn't have a good understanding of how to put boundaries for me and be healthy for me and what I really needed in that. I thought that the doing for everyone else was right, but that really was out of alignment because I can't, if we do for everyone else and we give it all away, we're drained, we're just going to be running out of energy, we're going to be drained, or we're going to end up injured as I was, or ill, in that lifestyle. So it was in that place that I really learned I needed to reset my mindset and learn to just be with God, just be with myself and accept, who I was and what my family needed, and not just doing for them, but being with them, being really present with them, connecting with them, not just getting all the tasks done, but really hearing my kids' hearts. At this point, they were older, they weren't babies anymore. So they're little people. They have thoughts and emotions and feelings, and, really connecting deeply with them. I wasn't making that kind of space for them because there was always so much to be done.
And it's so true. I remember back in episode 180, a lady called Ruth Fogg talks about what the mind suppresses, the body expresses. And she talks about the eliminating of stress. And where we're going with this conversation here, Dana, is very much a case of it's so easy to get swept along in other people's lives that you forget to live your own.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is so easy to do that. And it feels like it's the right thing to do. And certainly it is to care for other people is important. But if we don't make that space to balance and care for ourselves, we can very quickly be out of control. We can very quickly have our own injuries happening along the way, own things that need attention, and we're not getting well. We're walking around injured. We're serving others injured, and those injuries will have an increasing effect in our own life and relationship over time. Those don't just go away, and they don't even stay like in that moment when you got that injury and the way you responded, maybe, consider that maybe it was like a level 1 or 2, but over time, if we don't deal with it and we don't make that space to heal and talk about what we're hurting with or a loss that we had, then those responses will get higher intensity over time.
Yeah. So tell me the purpose piece and being focused on it. So not just understanding what it is, but how you can establish the boundaries and not get overly excited about bringing out the purpose in the world with which there's nothing wrong with being overly excited, but with to the detriment of your own health.
Yes, yes. So what I learned and really where purpose comes for me in this is to be a voice for inner healing. To I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that I needed healing. I didn't know that it could be better. I didn't know at the time that I could be more fulfilled and more peaceful and a better mom and a better volunteer and a better wife and a better all of those things if I put the boundaries, if I slowed down, if I made time for rest and made time for the healing, made time for myself in that way. I mean, people use the word self-care and that completely would fit, not just the bath, but where you're really making space to process your thoughts, process your emotions, talking with someone close to you. That was my heart in writing the book. I wrote it really very simply. I wrote it for people who are hurting to be able to process easily. And it's got a little bit of kind of a storytelling of this is what I went through. And then it connects to you and to your journey. And how can you relate? Can you relate to racing thoughts? Can you relate to a time when everything changed? And so creating a space where people can connect with their own heart and process and begin to process maybe for the first time some of those things that they've been ignoring or stuffing down. So being that voice for inner healing, encouraging them that you can heal and you don't have to just survive. You don't have to just live in this walking wounded state, but that you can truly find healing, and that will bring you the very fulfillment that you're looking for. When we do that healing work, it improves all of our relationships. It improves all of our relationships, and a piece that goes with healing is really knowing your value. And sometimes we don't make the time because we don't think we have value, or we don't really recognize the value that we really have and what we really have to offer, and how to protect that and nurture it and make space for it to grow and heal and all of these pieces that are so important. So making a space for inner healing, being a voice for inner healing, creating resources for people to help process and do that inner healing, heal from those deeper injuries, those things that happened in the past that we so often don't either make time for or we don't have time. Sometimes when things happen, especially if it's a loss of a loved one, a death in the family, things happen so quickly, we don't have time to process. But if we don't ever make the time for that, then it doesn't go away, and it will still come up, and that hurt will still be there. So I'm really passionate and find great purpose in wanting people to know just how to begin that process, how to release some of that in a safe way, how to know when you need to talk to someone else, your pastor, your minister, a counselor, a close trusted friend, bringing other people into these conversations, and just tools to help you recognize that process.
And it's interesting because you're talking about processing thoughts and emotions, and what I'm hearing is it's not necessarily the thoughts, but it's the attachments to the thoughts that we have the issues with that causes any suffering, and that we're looking to sort of attaching to a thought means that then we believe it to be true, but without the inquiry process and without sort of really understanding what it is, we can let go of a lot of things.
We can. Yes. Yes. It is the thoughts. And it's also, if we don't process the thoughts, sometimes something that happened is it's truly so painful. It truly is. And I'm not minimizing pain at all. to say that, but sometimes it is just truly so painful. Often I hear people that I work with just say, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to deal with that. So then what happens is they don't. And they start looking for other ways to escape, other ways to numb the pain, other ways to avoid the pain, deny the pain. And all of these structures that we add on, all these kind of, their self-defense systems, their survival tools. They're okay in the moment, but if we don't ever unpack those, then all of those things that we put there to protect ourselves, because we just don't, it's almost like this sore spot, like don't step on this part of my heart. It's just going to hurt too much. So I put up all these walls and barriers so you don't get close to that. But walls are walls, and walls keep you from connecting deeply to the very people in your close relationships or new relationships that could bring that healing that you need.
So tell me, Dana, the book, the work you're doing as a minister, and the podcast, what is it that connects you to your audience the most, or which of those vehicles, or is it a combination of all of them?
That's a great question. It's really, I love the one-on-one. I wish that I could just talk one-on-one with people all the time. That's honestly my most comfortable space, is to be in a room with another person or maybe a small group. I love to teach about these principles and teach people to do ministry from the heart level, the way that I've been trained. I love to teach it, and I love to share it, and I love to give them a space to share and to learn to do that with each other. So that personal space is my favorite. COVID has taught us to use the electronic space and definitely pushed me out of the nest from where I was comfortable. But back before COVID, we didn't do any counseling or, prayer ministry over electronics. It was all about the personal connection, so that you can really read people's body language and just really be present with them. But we've all gotten more comfortable with that space. And so electronically doing classes works well. I still prefer the live class. I still prefer looking at people's faces and seeing everyone together. But sharing information, sharing tools is a secondary way to just help give people some resources. Again, tools in their toolkit to process and recognize, hey, maybe I do have something there that's worth, and this is how it can look. There's something worth processing. I do have value to give, and this is blocking me, this response or this past injury is keeping me from really moving forward freely. So sometimes just the conversation helps us to know, wow, yeah, that did kind of hit something for me. I think I do have something there that's worth exploring and healing.
So being a voice for inner healing, what's the mission?
So good. The voice for inner healing mission, the mission is to see you be, each person everyone who hears this, to see you be who you're designed to be, to see you using your gifts, to see you knowing your value. Everyone has value. Everyone has gifts. Everyone has something to offer the world. No one is born without that. We all have something, and your gifts might not look like the other people in your family, or they might not look like your siblings or the people around you. And but everyone has gifts, and you have value, and you know something that someone else needs to know. And so I want to see people remove those barriers. I want to see those walls come down so that they can move freely. So they can move freely in the gifts that they're given. One of my favorite my life Bible verse is Hebrews 12:1-2. And it says, therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside all these encumbrances, these things that so easily entangle us. Picture a runner, carrying all these heavy things and things that are tangling them up. They can't run. Let's get all this off. Let's get all this out of the way so that we can run with endurance the race that's marked out for us. Fixing our eyes on Jesus. We have a hope. There's good news. There's always hope. There's the journey's not over. As long as you're here on this earth, you're running a race. You're in a lane. So let's get these things out of the way so you can be who you're designed to be. And that's the place you're going to have the most fulfillment. That's the place you're going to have the most reward. And others are going to be encouraged by you being who you're meant to be.
And it's interesting that you've used this metaphor and the taking it from Hebrews 12:1 and 2, this running a race element metaphor that you're using, yet you were talking earlier about the speedy society. So I'm just trying to see how are they in conflict, or do they work together?
They do work together. They do work together. A good runner knows their own pace. A good runner knows the speed. A good runner, a professional runner, they know when to kick in and push, and they know when to pull back and rest. They know when to save the energy. They know when to give it everything they have. A good runner knows how to run their race, and they know how to not injure themselves for the next day of running, right? They know they know the stretch. They are so focused on their health and their body and what to eat, what to drink, how much sleep they get, everything that goes in their body, they're aware of, because it all is impacting their race. So that awareness of how am I designed? How am I eating? How am I drinking? What am I taking? What am I putting in my body? How much sleep am I getting? That's a huge one. We all function so much better rested. Our emotions are so much happier when we're rested. So, that balance of the rest and the run, balance of the doing and the being, and really being able to be present. A good runner is present in that moment. They're present in the run. They're not thinking about the start. I mean, they're just very much in the moment. What do I need to do? What am I feeling? How are my muscles? They're very aware if they need a drink of water or if they take the energy, whatever it is that they do for themselves. And I'm talking about these elite runners and long distance runners, because life is not a sprint. Life is a marathon. It's the long distance. You've got to have the big game, the long game in mind. We've got to have that in mind in our self-care. We've got to have that in mind in our relationships, raising kids, even our businesses and ministries and things that we invest in. We've got to have this long game in mind. So that's the balance of when do I need the rest? When do I need to rebuild? I think I've got an injury here. I'm going to be better served stepping out, taking a time out. Coach, I need to go to the bench, get the help, get the healing so that I can run well the next day, so I can run well down the road.
Perfect. Thank you for making sure that we are living in this crazy society that we live in, but we still have our own focus and our own way of figuring things out. I love it. Dana, how could people get in contact with you? What's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, the best way to get me is on my website, which is www.Dana Grindal, Grindal.com. All the resources, contact email, all of those things are there.
Perfect. Well, Dana, it has been an absolute pleasure hearing why you do what you do. And I am thrilled that we've been introduced because it is such a wonderful insight. So thank you. Do you have some final words for the audience, please?
Yeah. I just want every one of you to know that you do have a why. You're not an accident. You're here on purpose. You have a gift. You have something to offer the world. So I encourage you to invest in that. If you need to make a space or time for healing so that you can recognize and walk in that, do that, because you are worth the investment. And the world needs to know what you have to offer.
How has this conversation had an impact on you? What value have you received from tuning in? What are your reflections with actions? Please take a moment to leave me an Apple Podcast or Spotify review sharing how Focus on Why has made a difference to you today. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. To keep it going, simply connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook or Twitter, or join the Focus on Why Facebook group. All the links are in the show notes. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.